All right, so just getting started. I figured we start off with an easy one, one that's a little more fun. So now we're actually going into the specific decision items for budgets. And so the first thing I wanted to talk about was community activities. And this is the total budget for the rec board. It's not the total budget for community activities, but the other things in community activities are like pavilion rentals and things that won't change too much. So I did put on here $5,000 for evergreen signage, such as that big sign that they put across the road for Fall Fest. That one is adjustable so that they can add dates and times and keep that evergreen. But I think there's a desire for more of that type of signage so that we can promote the events better. So that's what that is. I wanted to confirm that we want to also do $15,000 again this year for fireworks. I know it was a pretty big hit this year, so I wanted to confirm that we want to keep that amount. And then I have $3,000 for senior dinners. $1,600 has been spent so far this year, minus the what we took in, and that was for two. So, and I was hoping to have this conversation when Aaron and Pam were here, but maybe we can talk to them later. But do we know, I don't know, John, if you've talked to the rec board, but do you know if I know that they had talked about doing more, but do you know how many?
Yeah, I think not this year. I think we're done this year, and into next year was going to be early next year. And then I think like at the max, it would be like 3.
Okay.
I don't think they were planning because they're having the other events too, and there are a lot to organize too.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think doubling it.
I don't even know that we need to double it.
No.
So that's what the budget was this year, 3,000. They only spent 1,600. So I say just leave it at the same budget.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that's 2,400 if we had 3, if the costs don't go up. So that gives us a little bit of wiggle.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. Okay. The 1,500 for the car cruise, this was one that I mentioned, consider canceling. There were 2 or 3 other car cruises that happened after this one, and ours unfortunately was not all that successful. I think we were on the same weekend as a number of others. So I suggested just canceling this. I know that the rec board was wanting to slim down work that they were doing, and then maybe move this to 4th of July, because I know there was excitement around what we did for Fall Fest, and that it's moving more towards something a little bigger, and there was interest in doing that for 4th of July too.
And I think they run very close to each. It's only a couple weeks away.
Right.
One is like mid-July or June, and then the other one's July 4th. So it's a lot to plan and to work on for 2 events back to back like that. So I'd be in favor of canceling that.
Okay, great. And then the Fall Fest, we definitely went over budget this year for Fall Fest. It was a new thing, and at the last minute when we got a bunch of attention, we definitely spent some money to make sure that we weren't caught with our pants down, and made sure that it was a well-funded and good event. And it was a huge hit. I think we had over 800 people at the event. It was
more than that.
More than that. Yeah. I've heard 1,000. I've had numerous numbers. I always go on the conservative side. How you doing?
Yeah.
Yep.
And
and I can say, I mean, I was only there for the first half, so I was pretty amazed at it. But the other thing that I really wanted to bring to the table was how grateful so many families were that the bounce house didn't cost money.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
It was that was so much goodwill. I cannot believe it.
Mm-hmm. Was the 7,229, was that the cost this year?
Yeah, that's this year's. Yeah, sorry, I should have said that. That's this year's cost. Yeah.
Okay. And we budgeted 5, or we're proposing 5?
Well, that's what was budgeted last year. I don't know that we necessarily need to up it. I'm not entirely certain. I think some of that cost was that additional last second, like, let's spend some money. Let's the big sign we bought for it and some other things. So I don't anticipate that we need to spend more. but if it comes down to it at the end, I think we should budget 5 and then see
Yeah.
where we go from there.
Okay.
And then we have the same amounts that we have for this year for Halloween and Celebration of Lights.
Does
Um,
Halloween cost
Another,
1,000?
no, I'm sorry.
No, I
I
actually,
was
I
gonna
don't,
say
know. Go ahead.
sorry. Another point, because this event was so successful, we probably can get community sponsorship that would help defray the cost, because this is the sort of thing that the community businesses have typically supported in the past.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And we will definitely look into that. That's good.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So my question again was on the Halloween events. So it's really the audio for the car cruise, I think is for the,
Yeah, I'm not sure why
Okay.
they anticipated $3,000. I just pulled this budget from last year. I didn't have
Okay.
a specific conversation
Right.
with that.
So
board.
I can actually speak to that, I'm pretty sure. They have been using software from a company that has given them substantial discounts for the years that we've done it, and I think that they're always anticipating that maybe they're not going to be able to continue to get that level of discount.
Okay. All right, so we'll leave it the same for both of those, and then if there's significant variation or interest from rec board, we can bring that up. All right, any other questions with rec board before I move on to the next topic?
I don't.
Yeah.
Did he talk?
I don't, yeah, what is the etiquette with workshops? I actually don't, yeah.
Of course, yeah. we can talk, yeah.
Question or observation that I saw that I just wanted to bring to your attention.
Yep.
You're already aware of this, and I talked about it. Fireworks this year
Mhm.
happen simultaneously with Inklets, which don't get me wrong, it's cool to hang out in the parking lot down there and like both roads directions.
Yeah.
But part of me said, man, couldn't we do something really big together and combine resources? Now, I don't know if they are scheduled for the same night this year, but just something to be aware of, that they did happen simultaneously on August 5th.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's great point. So
Yeah, I can reach out to
definitely
them.
put that for the rec board to make sure, because if we could combine total resources, if it's one company, then
Get an even bigger
Yeah.
display,
Yeah.
yeah.
absolutely.
But I mean, I heard the
Well,
same
it
feed
could-
recently, and I also heard that Ingram still had better fireworks, even though we raised our budget from the year before. So
Oh,
Yeah, that's
I
so
heard
was
that ours
it,
really big. They
yeah,
weren't.
yeah, I couldn't quite hear what was said. Was that somebody in the audience? But
Oh,
I
yeah,
talking about trying to combine forces.
yeah, Mike, is it Huff?
Oh,
Hof.
anyway, you say this.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Mike Hof
Hof?
is in the audience and he suggested, yeah, he said when he was down there that both of the displays went on at the same time and thought, why don't we just combine them and make one big display? So it's a larger presentation. Okay. Any other comments before I move on to the next one?
No.
Okay. Now, getting into the harder questions, this is the police budget, some of the high point or some of the questions and more the decision points on the police budget. The big one is there on top. Should council ask Thornburg for an increase? If we going back to 2016, we were at 92,700,000 in 2016. And we have stayed at 101.3 since 2020. And I did a little based on inflation calculation from September of this year. And if we base that inflation for $92,000, we would be up around $120,000 if we followed inflation. So I just want to throw that question out. Is now a good time? Should we wait till next year to ask, or?
What if
I think
we
it's-
look at the salaries, because salaries go up.
Mhm.
So rather than just straight up inflation, like how has that impacted salaries? Because it does seem fair to ask Thornburg to pay more if it's proportionate to the increase in salaries.
Mhm.
I mean, I think we looked at that during committee, didn't we? We talked a little bit through it,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
and it's
And,
still,
You know, I absolutely think it's time to approach them about it. Because they got to pass the last time it was up for discussion. They begged off, and council at that time decided, you know, to let them go at that at the same rate. So I mean, it is beyond time to
Is
do
that-
some kind of raise.
Is that a conversation that you and the chief should start, that John should start? Who?
Well,
It's.
so this is budget, and I'd like to keep the chief out of it.
Yep.
And so I think that, you know, budget is council to council. And I would think that council to council presidents should have a conversation about it. And then that will give you an opportunity to, you know, test the waters, you know, without saying we're going to raise you this much. That would be my suggestion.
Okay.
or you know, manager to manager or whatever. Somebody reaching out to somebody over there and just saying, hey,
Yeah,
there's
no,
some-
there's no manager. There's no manager over there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a part-time manager or clerk. Okay. And then the rest of the items I just have listed on here. We already have all of these items budgeted. But I just wanted to give anybody, just so everybody knows, these are the kind of the bigger capital expenses that are specific to this year. They're not something that we budget every year. Well, I take that back. Police cruiser is something that we budget every year. We now have a rotation of four years worth of police cruisers, and just we buy one every year, and then we sell the oldest one at the end of that. It seems to be about the best way to get a good return on our investment when we sell them, and still keep them in reasonably good vehicles all year round. Updated laptops. I think the chief said that their laptops have not been significantly updated in 8 years.
That would be correct.
Right. And that's a pretty long time for laptops. Justin, the tech guy, is shaking his head. So
It's like a 5-year cycle for nonprofits. If
right.
like it should be a 3 to 4 year cycle typically.
And if we look at this, so all these things that you have listed, including the police chief search and the overlap, are all costs that we're bearing, again, that they should have a proportion of too. Because
Yeah,
know,
they're
if we're-
benefiting from them. too,
right,
Right.
all, we need a police chief for their police coverage. We need updated laptops. So these are all costs that we're bearing, and there's no bearing from Thornburg on
Yeah.
these costs.
I mean, so should we, because we have to go to Thornburg to confirm that they would be amiable to this, because remember, they have options, right? They could go to state, they could do whatever they could drop us if they
Mhm.
wanted to. So we
Right.
should talk to them about, I mean, I don't think it's unfair to ask for a portion of that to be covered, but like, how would you handle that, right? I mean, like we have our ongoing costs of salary and benefits and all the other things that we probably could predict and charge kind of on a table, like you see here, based on how our prices for running these things are going up. But then should we be charging them outside of that as well for these kind of these are only costs that maybe happen this year, except for the police cruiser. Like we could probably factor the police cruiser into the calculations for all this stuff too. But I think
I think that's a really good observation to maybe have a 1 year surcharge. Now, I know during the our budget meetings in the committee, Jim had looked at this from a per capita standpoint, and I think that also came in real close to the number you mentioned a little while ago. Do you remember? Do you have that handy, Jim?
I don't have that handy. I'd forgotten that I had
Mhm.
done it that way. But yes, I can bring that up, and I can provide that, John, if you're gonna be the person to talk to them. I can provide you with all this backup information.
Yeah, I think, again, there's not been an increase for 4 years. And the increases prior were very minimal. So as we know, things have changed since those time periods. That's
Mhm.
pandemic. And inflation, salaries, everything have gone up, but there's been no change to their coverage. So that just doesn't happen in today's world. So we definitely have to be on a pattern where the expectation should be that there's an increase every year, because the cost for our police expenses increase every year. It's not flat.
I'm on board with asking them for a more proportionate increase, but I think I'm with Justin that we should be kind of careful and diplomatic about asking it, because we are bringing this up very late in the year. So they're already in their budget talks too, and they should be able to afford an increase. We're not talking about a huge amount, but it is something that they most likely have not been budgeting. And now they're in the midst of their budget season too. So we should be a little flexible.
Say to
So
be
what
fair,
we might be able, yeah, so what we might be able to do, your point is well taken. And what we might do is do maybe a smaller one and do like a 3-year agreement, so that they've got something to look forward to, and we can, ultimately get where we need to be with it. They're also at this late stage probably not going to go out looking for anything else over, a few $1,000s. I mean, I know that our chief gives them a lot of attention.
Yeah.
The Thornburg mayor requests a lot from him, and he is very responsive.
I'll also say that at least one of the communities I'm working with now, they do provide a service to a neighboring community such as this, and they've had a couple different approaches to how to calculate what's a fair amount. They used to look at just the salaries, and basically if the salaries were going up by 3% every year, they would just bump the number by 3% over. And they usually have like a 2 to 4 year contract with the other community. But recently what they've started to do is look at a percentage of the total budget based on what, I don't know what this would be. It's less than 10%.
So there's the total on top.
Yeah, well, like Jim's saying,
so-
it should be 120,000 or something. But whatever it is, right? It's probably single digit percentages between 5 and 10. You can look at it from that perspective, because every year when your total budget goes up, you're catching the salary component, you're catching the capital improvements, the capital investments. And so that's where they moved, and they're in the middle of that right now, and it's been okay. I mean, nobody's complaining, and it's helped because the numbers went up a little bit higher, and it's been fortunate because of the inflationary pressures that everybody's experiencing right now. So, just a thought.
yeah, I think the per capita approach is probably the fairest, that way we calculate our head count, their head count, figure out the ratio. At least approach them with that number. I'm not saying we have to enforce it, but it's
At least see what the number is.
I mean, it's a good talking point regardless, if residents of Crafton are paying, significantly more for police coverage per person relative to what Thornburg pays, that's a good negotiating point.
Okay, then the last two things on this list, just to mention them, are monies for a police chief search. As most of you know, Chief Sumter's set to retire at the beginning of 2025, so he'll be here through all of next year. But in February, I think, of 2025, he's set to retire. So it'd be nice to have a search done and completed before he leaves, and that's the last line, which is to actually have someone on board before he leaves, so that there can be a overlap period there.
Right, and just to drive that point home, his last duty day will be the last day of 2024. He'll be riding some vacation time through to February.
Okay. Great. Okay, any other questions before I move to the next budget? Okay. This is the Public Works budget, also a sizable budget at 1.1 million. these first two things have been are in the budget currently, and it's balanced, and that is the oldest dump truck. That dump truck is over 11 years old. It is in rough shape. It does require a fair bit of maintenance, so that's on the list to replace. And I actually realize now that I have the wrong number in here. That price has actually gone up to 110. So that's in the budget that way. I think I'll double check that. Skid steer is replacing the skid steer that they have. This is not a worn out skid steer, but we are a skid steer is, just for everybody involved, it's a very small it can have all kinds of attachments on it, but it's just basically a small four-wheeled vehicle that is used for like plowing small places, or for mowing small places, or for using a bucket on the front of it. So it is very versatile. The problem with the one that we have is it's a four-wheel version versus a track version, right? So it's not very smooth, and when you're trying to do paving or mowing with it, it bounces around a lot. And we can actually use that skid steer to do milling for smaller repairs, and it's very effective for that. So that's the idea behind getting a skid steer. I think this has been budgeted before, but it was never purchased. So that's on the budget. The next thing is that is obviously a very significant purchase. That's a front loader. The main purpose of that, one of our most successful programs that we have, is the wood chipping and the mulch that we have down at the Public Works building that we provide at the park. But turning that mulch and that compost is difficult with the equipment we have. That is a much easier way to do it. I have not budgeted yet, and I'm not ready to budget it yet because it is such a large expense. And I'm working on options with Carnegie to possibly share some vehicles. They have a bucket truck and we do not, and that is something that we borrow fairly regularly. They also have a Vector truck, which we do not. And we are considering downsizing to a smaller street sweeper so that it doesn't, and that will not have a Vector. So we'll be able to borrow their Vector. The reason I want to downsize our street sweeper is ours now requires a CDL, which means only two of our public works people can use it. And during this time of year, we get lots of requests for that street sweeper to come out because of the leaves and dust and everything else that happens this time of year. So just to let everybody know. The next item on this list is last year we budgeted $45,000 for public works seasonal wages. And we set those wages at $15 and $16 an hour. And this year we spent $13,000 of that $45,000 because we couldn't get people to work seasonal public works. It was difficult. We put it out in several places, but we were only able to get a few people. So my suggestion is keeping that budget high, but then when we adjust the wages at the end of the year, raise those wages so that we have a better opportunity to hire people. And it's a big need because we definitely, I know I struggle to keep up with the mayor's messages about the landscaping not being done well. And I want to make sure that we have the right people and more people involved so that we can keep that landscaping up to where it needs to be.
What were the things that we struggled with the most in not being able to address because we didn't have the part-time workers?
It was keeping Clearview Trail well manicured. It was keeping the new bump outs well manicured. Just generally that kind of work because there was so much. Well, we had a lot of problems with the pool house at the beginning of the year this year, or the pool itself at the beginning of the year this year. And just the projects that they're doing on a regular basis, it's kind of, that's the last thing on the list. It tends to be. So we're not able to do that as effectively this year. So. And then the last thing is, and this came directly from our intern's work, Shabam's work, is $20,000 for street signs. And that is budgeted. I've added that. It was not it's not in your paperwork. I think your paperwork has it as at 15,000. I did raise it to 20,000 because that will cover basically all of the street signs that are in poor condition. That includes the street name signs, that includes the parking signs, and that includes any of the cautionary signs like you have to merge or that type of signage.
Does that include the missing ones, street signs?
That is a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah,
I will
'cause there's
check.
definitely some that are just a pole and nothing's on top.
Okay. Yeah, I'll double check that he captured that. I don't know if he captured that.
One of the big ones is right next to the ice cream shop.
Oh,
Burn,
on Thomas or on Foster?
Thomas.
Thomas.
There's no sign there. So when you come down, there's a pole, but there's no sign. So if you need to get to somebody's house, you don't know that that's Thomas.
I mean, I've actually gotten a lot of feedback lately from folks about street signs and how they aren't there. A lot of folks on Promenade have been talking to me about that, like Promenade, Grandview, and then the alley behind Linwood Park. No stop signs at all at that intersection. We had, a resident come to council last meeting and suggest the addition of a stop sign in front of their property. Is 20,000. I mean, I don't know if the infrastructure folks have any other plans for additional looks at other places that signage may be added or warranted, but maybe we need more than 20,000 if it seems to be a pretty hot topic lately.
Yeah, we could add some budget there and see how that works out. I can add 5 and I'll double check the missing signs.
And if you can just share with us specific intersections or locations, and we can have that looked at.
That was my next question. Yep. Okay. Anything else on the public works budget? Nope. Okay. Municipal properties. Now that number at the top is the total budget. That's not the total of what's listed on this page. These are just the additional things, the more capital investments that we're talking about. AC unit on the code office, that basically has to be done. So I hope you allow me to buy that. Otherwise I'm gonna have some really upset code officials. Cause that's some days it works really well, other days it doesn't work at all. The bathroom renovation in the admin, that will be done in-house. And that's estimated to be about 5,000. Take the 2 bathrooms that we have now and combine them into one. And make it ADA accessible. The one that's in there now is neither one of them are even close to being ADA accessible. They're barely normal standing human accessible. And then $5,000 for 3 water bottle filling stations. Those essentially will pay themselves off in a few years, probably about 2 to 3 years. Because we currently buy and have water bottles or water stations shipped in. And we're paying somewhere in the ballpark of $250 a month, $150 a month for those. So that will pay itself off fairly easily. The next couple, one is the $11,000 for carpet for this room, council chambers, and the administrative offices. The audience isn't as bad, but behind there, you can see that this carpet is all wrinkled and is coming up and there's several stains in it. And that is true, of course, of the other one in the administrative offices too. It's not very professional at this point. So we'd like to replace those. The wall repairs and paint are for in the offices. There was a leak in the roof a few years ago and that's needed to be repaired for several years. So we would like to get that done. It's one of the public works workers, seasonal workers this summer was repeatedly telling us how cigarette butts were everywhere. So on the next item, would be adding nice professional cigarette butt receptacles in front of the magistrate building, in front of the borough building, and then down at the pool. Because that's all where they found them the most. And then the last one is $5,000 for meeting room furniture. And I wrote that incorrectly, meeting room and upgrade. So we'd basically be redoing the 2 meeting rooms that are right next to this room and allowing them to be divided so that we can rent them out. Currently they have basically a storing just a lot of furniture, but also historic items. And those historic items are owned by the library, and we're working with the library and Crafton Heritage to have a sharing operation where certain days a week, folks can come up and visit them. If they want to look at some of these historic documents, whether they be minutes from meetings that were 70 years ago or things that are on microfiche, we will have those available for folks in that room. So that's what that budget is for.
Is there the opportunity to get, I mean, lots of offices are closing, commercial spaces too, to get that from places that are getting rid of that?
That's the hope. I mean, we're right on the busway. We're very accessible. I figured it would be nice to be able to rent that out, and we could even rent it out. And this is another suggestion when we do the fee schedule at the end of the year, is adding weekly or monthly rentals. Right now, we just rent everything one at a time. But if we have someone that's going to do a meeting once a week or once a month, we can rent the whole year out for them, and then they could have that meeting every month.
I meant for the furniture.
Oh, what
For the furniture, obviously we can budget it, but do we want to go and see if companies are giving away furniture?
I've actually already talked to
Yeah.
Colton had some furniture for me, and we didn't get around to buying it in time because I didn't have the rooms cleaned out. But hopefully we'll be able to look at that in the future. And I don't know, Colton, if you are regularly getting furniture that is available. Are you there, Colton? No. Okay.
Just kind of a zany idea, but putting it in our minds to think about in the future. We do have, you're talking about the historical artifacts and opening that up for people to see and use. We also have a lot of bricks, the old bricks.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe an opportunity to like auction them off at some point, or a select number of them, and let people own a piece of the history and maybe raise some money for something.
Make your driveway. You want to have a brick drive.
Clear out some storage space.
Yep. Okay. Good idea. All right. Anything else before I move on the municipal properties topic? Okay. This is on an annual basis, we contribute $84,000 currently to the library. That was increased last year from 82,000 to 84,000. And they have asked us specifically that can we lock them in at a 3% increase every year? And so that's currently their ask. I have budgeted currently, the balance budget is 84,000. I did not add this yet. This came in after I had budgeted. But I'd like to put that to council, or even do we come back with another suggestion, like maybe 2%? I would think personally 2% is more reasonable. Because that's about that's the goal for inflation anyway. So. Any thoughts?
I mean, I don't know that we would want to commit to a multi-year kind of like rate lock-in, but I mean, 3% this year seems okay to me.
Yeah, I think I was going to make another point along that line is, whether, because each new council could just as easily change it. Steve can probably talk to that a little bit more.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I missed part of what you said. What was your suggestion?
Oh, no, I was saying, new council has the, right to change the budget.
Oh, yeah.
And so committing to a long-term thing like that, we probably want to think about a little more carefully.
Okay.
And I was just saying, maybe Steve can talk. Yeah.
The new council does have a window of opportunity right at the beginning of the year to reopen the budget and pass a new one before the end of, I think it's January, could be into February, but you only have about 30 to 60 days to do that. So
right, but
Does that happen every year?
Yeah, it would happen
no, only
every
after
new council.
Okay.
But in the subsequent year, when it isn't new and they're planning, they can decide that they don't want to honor an agreement that the previous council made. So I wasn't talking about just the reopening of the budget, but a future council deciding that they don't want to honor something that we put into place.
Remember for
Can we
this
commit to
too-
1 year and then just commit,
Yeah.
like, agree to that we support?
I think as we look at this, remember, we just had this discussion about Thornburg.
Mhm.
So relate these things together. Thornburg, we're hesitant to ask for an increase, or we may want to, but the library has come for the past 2 years and said we want an increase. And these amounts are about, they're not far off from each other. So as a council, we have to look at these things and we have to be fiscally responsible. So we're going to press for increases for other folks. We also have to look at our budget too. So they're coming at budget time asking us for this increase.
Right. And
Perfect.
I have on multiple occasions discussed the option of getting Ingram to name Crafton Public Library as their library of record. And there's two things that happens. They then need to contribute a certain per capita, but their percentage of the rand money that the library gets would come to Crafton Library as opposed to the big Carnegie Library, which is where it goes right now. And that's been, a low-level discussion since the point when I was on the board, the library board, quite a number of years ago. And it's never really been, pushed forward. There's a little bit of talk, and then it sounds like, well, they might be open to it. So that may be something to pursue more assiduously.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't familiar with that. I didn't.
And I think last year we asked, what would the increase be used for? So when the ask was done, we said, well, show us the breakdown of why the increase was needed. So I would recommend that.
Yeah, they did send that over. I'll make sure I send that to everybody on council. So.
And doesn't the library also cover Robinson, Warrenburg? Because their council people don't live just in Crafton.
Yeah, I'm not sure what their jurisdiction. I don't think it's Robinson, but I know it's Thornburg and maybe Rossland Farms.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
But I'm not sure that either of those communities, and I could be wrong because I've not been on the board for a while, that either of those communities name Crafton Library as their home library. And that's something that just needs to be looked at. I know that there are statistics available that shows generally how much of our library usage is from people in various communities, or at least there used to be those percentages available to the library board.
Okay, I will ask Alyssa. She has the records for that. Justin.
No, and I just want to go ahead and say, like, I don't disagree with any of the things y'all are bringing up for library of record. That all makes sense, right? We're likely carrying the costs of burden of running it for other communities who are participating in the library anyways. That aside, a 3% increase of 25-20 seems like we're splitting hairs. So I still think, like, if we don't give them an increase like that, either salaries don't go up for the great folks that work at the library, or library operations suffer, and that means everybody else suffers. So for $2,500, like,
they get additional funding from other places too. So it's not just solely from Crafton, but we have to be fiscally conscious. Again, we've got the pool, we've got the police, we've got lots of other things that we do, that we supplement in addition to the library.
what's our total budget again, Jim?
Just the just the general budget is just shy of 6 million.
$6 million. Yeah, 2,500.
It's 2,500. I'm in favor.
Okay.
And we could also be looking at the police to say, oh, 20,000, that's
Yeah.
the same thing. That should be nothing.
All right. And then the following things will be budgeted under municipal properties, but they've also asked that their carpet be replaced as well. I think it was replaced as at the same time that this was replaced. So it's been more than 10 years. It's definitely in need of replacement. I have that budgeted currently. And then they've also have received an ask for a new and this was actually Pam who council member Polkownik who mentioned this. And a new awning for the library and for the magistrate. We, John, Mr. Oliveri and I had a meeting or had a conversation earlier today about the magistrate. Their lease is up and they are looking to re-sign. So we will not budget that until we know that they're going to re-sign for their part of it. But I would suggest that we find the money and budget for the library because it does look very poor in the front of that. So throwing that out there, would like to try to budget that moving forward. All right, we are at time pretty much. I'll just mention this last piece. The budget for the parks, the total budget for the parks is $24,000 with that $5,000 bottle filling station. That was a request of the rec board. And it's something that apparently there was a water fountain down there initially, but it hasn't been there for years. So that is something that would be useful to have there. The next is the stage roof. That is a very rough estimate for what it'll take to fix. I did not budget that because we have not signed an MOU with the Performing Arts Group yet, and I'm working on that. So I'll keep everybody posted, but we're moving towards that conversation.
The water bottle filling station, that's for one?
That's for one, because it's an outdoor water bottle. It has to handle the weather and everything else. So, yeah. And I don't want to keep going because we're at 7:14 and we need to start the actual meeting, the official council meeting. So I guess we'll stop there. The next topics we can dig into at the next budget meeting, and they're the big ones around the bond fund and the sewer fund. So I left the fun ones for last. So, all right, with that.
We're ending the budget workshop